I'm Ron Villanueva, Executive Director of the Coastal Virginia Chamber of Commerce, joined by my good friend, Delegate Jason Miyares from the 82nd House District in Virginia Beach. I had the honor and privilege of serving with Jason in the House of Delegates. Jason is an attorney, a family man, a statesman, and, he is my good friend. By the way, he is also a YouTube fan. Jason, welcome on our Coastal Virginia Chamber of Commerce show. We're focused on regional and local business affairs. We wanted to ask you a lot of good topics out there. Right now, the General Assembly is in special session. Could you give us a special update on what's going on in the General Assembly right now?
No, I appreciate it, Ron. It's great to see you again. It is, as you know, the General Assembly usually only meets in the wintertime, so it's a bit unusual that we're meeting in the dog days of summer. But we always knew we had to go back because we had to readjust the state budget because of COVID-19. I like to say this is the first government-mandated recession in Virginia history. So what was supposed to be a one-day session has now turned into we're tackling a lot of police reform and then the budget and then also COVID-19 related issues, which as you and I have discussed, COVID-19 has just disrupted our entire society. It's kind of the first event really since World War II that has affected literally each and every American in our great nation. So we're back in session addressing some COVID-19 and some other matters. And I'm not quite sure when it's supposed to end. They have not given me an end date. Right now we are meeting virtually, which means at least 2 days ago, I was on a virtual Zoom call between 12 noon and then a committee meeting until about 7 o'clock at night. So it has been an interesting readjustment, I can assure you.
Jason, with regards to the state budget, COVID certainly impacted state budgets and local municipality government budgets. Do you foresee the governor instituting tax increases or tax cuts? I mean, where do we go? I mean, everybody's hurting right now, but in order to have programs and services still running, we're going to have to do something about that.
Yeah, I don't know where we're going to head. I would tell you this state budget, the reason why we're coming back in August is because there was a state budget that was passed in March based on December of 2019's revenue projections for 2020. And if you recall, when we rang in the new year this year, we were at 3.8% unemployment and a booming economy. And a booming economy translates into very high tax revenues for the Commonwealth. When we voted for the state budget in March based on, I thought, revenue forecasts that were not sustainable, I voted no, partly because I said COVID-19, which had already at that point hit the United States, is going to, and we passed a state budget that had increased state spending by 18% in a single year and had 36 different tax and fee increases. And I thought this is the wrong recipe for us as we likely will head into a economic recession, economic downturn because of the way COVID-19 had been so disruptive and every other country that has suffered through that. So our budget deficit right now, as you know, our fiscal year begins on July 1st, is actually pretty manageable. It's about $240 million. But I've already been told that when we come back in January, that deficit is going to be probably in the billions with a B. And that is going to cause some significant belt tightening at the state government level. I'm generally I don't believe in tax increases in a recession. I think that is the worst thing that could happen. But, as you know, my party is the minority party right now. The Republicans don't have control. And so I somewhat expect that the Democratic majority General Assembly, along with this governor, will probably have some type of tax increase that they will put on top of what they already passed to try to close some of that budget gap. So I can't predict the future. I know that I don't think it's just us. I think every state's going to have to make some really, really hard decisions, make those priorities where you focus on education, transportation, public safety. But I think right now, the way they're handling this, a lot of the spending increases that the governor had proposed right now are frozen. I don't know what that means and how they're going to handle it in January. I imagine they're going to push for those to remain frozen and try to find a way to close the gap.
Jason, how do we balance protecting our health versus growing the economy and sustaining the economy at the same sense during this COVID pandemic?
Well, I mean, I think we all have to be smart. I mean, I think the basic, kind of the social distancing and doing those measures that they have said, scientists have said we need to do to protect us. But you also have to realize that the analogy I use is like squeezing the air on a balloon. When you have a government shutdown, particularly some of the really, really extreme measures that were happening earlier this year, there's going to be a reaction. I saw one study that showed that over 70,000 Americans minimum are expected to die what are called deaths of despair this year, which is deaths from suicide, alcohol and drug, and in other words, deaths completely unrelated to COVID-19. Because if you've ever had a loved one that has dealt with addiction or depression, they will tell you isolation is the single worst box they can find themselves in. And so we are already seeing a huge number of increases of substance abuse, people that are getting addicted to try to get through this very dark time. As you know, Ron, I'm naturally an extrovert. Somebody sent me a meme the other day that said, check on your extrovert friends. They're having a hard time of it lately. But more than that is we are social creatures. So this has been incredibly hard on people. I think you have to have a smart, balanced approach. I think you need to find a way to let businesses reopen. I saw one study that showed 25 to 30% of all restaurants are expected to go under this year. I mean, the economic ripple here is going to be so drastic. I don't think we've gotten our arms around just how big of an impact that's going to be. I don't think this is something we're going to recover by this time next year. I think it's going to probably be at least 2 years to really dig ourselves out of kind of where we're at. And so I think you need to have a balanced approach. I think you can't just have a wholesale shutdown of the U.S. economy because at the end of the day, the costs that come with that are going to be in some ways greater. You can't make the cure worse than the disease. And so you have to find that balanced approach moving forward. And I think one of that is just really smart increased testing. For you to really have an idea of what's going on, you have to have, and for a long time, Virginia was 49th out of 50 states in testing, which really frustrated me. So I think there's a balanced approach you have to find and to move forward.
Jason, we know in this General Assembly session, there's a lot of focus, again, on small business. And you introduced a bill that helps protect small business against, fruitless lawsuits. Could you talk a little bit about your bill and what it intends to do?
Yeah, so one of the things when I talk to different small business owners, and it's not just for small business owners, it's for any legal entity in Virginia. So that would be our school, talking to schools and school board members, talking to our charities, is they felt like they were looking over their shoulders, worried about a frivolous lawsuit being sued against them. And I want to be clear, the way my bill is if you're grossly negligent, if you're a restaurant owner and you know somebody's COVID-19 positive and you send them out there to be a server, that's gross negligence. If somebody gets sick that way, there's obviously liability in that situation. But if you're trying to follow the rules, if you're trying to follow CDC guidelines and your state and local guidelines as far as social distancing and other matters, you should have a safe harbor. You shouldn't have to worry about a lawsuit that's going to come in and literally rob you of your livelihood. Because when we have so many businesses and restaurants that can't survive, and in some ways charities, charities rely upon the generous donations of folks as well. There's so much worry from folks, and then the schools, how are we going to reopen? I heard repeatedly is, well, we're worried about our liability exposure. So the idea is, let's give them a safe harbor. If you're following the rules, and somebody unfortunately still claims they got COVID-19 at your shop, but you were following the rules, you should have some liability protection. Otherwise, what's going to happen is the people that are going to benefit are going to be a lot of lawyers are going to make a lot of money, but the businesses are going to be closed down. They're going to be closed down, laying people off. And so you don't want to hit that double whammy. A lot of other states, Ron, have done this. I know there's some discussion at the national level, but as we've seen, and serving in Richmond, so often things can happen so much faster at the state level than the dysfunction you see in Washington. So DC hasn't been able to get their act together. A lot of other states, North Carolina has just done something similar. A lot of other states are trying to find some type of safe harbor for not just small businesses, but also for our charities, for our schools, for our churches. If you do things right, you follow the guidelines, you should be able to be protected from a frivolous lawsuit.
Well, Delegate Miyares, we know you have a very important bill, and one of the hallmarks of Jason is that he reaches across the aisle. Do you see this bill getting some traction during the General Assembly session?
Well, it's in a weird place. It got rolled right now. The status, it has been merged into another bill by a Democratic colleague who, in my opinion, they've changed the standard without getting into too much legal definition from gross negligence to strict liability, which some have argued would actually increase some liability exposure. So it's gonna get over the Senate. As you know, the Senate's gonna amend it some more. And then it's going to come back and we'll see what comes of it and if it ends up on the governor's desk. My hope is that the governor will recognize we need some type of safe harbor and it's not just, again, it's any legal entity in Virginia. So that also means our hospitals and our nurses, when they're out there on the front line, if they're practicing guidelines, they shouldn't be looking over their shoulder, looking to get nailed with a frivolous lawsuit.
Well, Jason, you are also a champion of redistricting reform. Having served in the General Assembly and been in a district that was always targeted, there was always thoughts of, hey, one party controlled the redistricting versus the other. And it's important to know that, elections change districts and they vote people in and out, but what's the importance of redistricting reform and some of the efforts that you see? And could you talk a little bit about the constitutional amendment that's coming up in November?
Well, the redistricting reform idea is, and I'm not a late newcomer. I remember being back in 2017 when our party had a 30-seat plus majority, almost a veto-proof majority in the General Assembly, that I voted for a redistricting reform legislation and privileges and election committee. And suddenly the next year I was no longer on the privileges and election committee. Go figure that. But I think the idea is you don't want politicians to rig the system. And that's my big worry. I mean, we have a chance here where we're not letting politicians pick their voters. What it would be, 8 Republicans and 8 Democrats would be on this the bipartisan commission. And they'd have to draw a map that everybody could live with. And it takes it out of the hands of politicians in Richmond, and who obviously have a very self-interest for their own just political preservation. And it puts it in the hands of 8 Republicans, 8 appointed Republicans, 8 appointed Democrats, takes that out of the politician hands and forces them to draw a map that everybody can live with. And so that's the idea, is let's get something that one party isn't using to just bludgeon the other. I don't think it's healthy. I had a Democratic colleague who, said if we control redistricting, we're going to redistrict Republicans into oblivion. And I don't think that's not good democracy, right? So I think the message is, don't let politicians rig the system. Vote yes on Amendment 1, which will be the last thing on your ballot this fall. And I think it's critically important. It's a huge important issue for the Commonwealth because I think it's a good government idea. I think the current, I don't think it is a good system we have in place where you could have, districts potentially starting in Arlington and ending in Richmond. I don't think that's a good way to govern. I don't think that's a district that reflects what people think democracy should look like. So it is a good government amendment. Vote yes on Amendment 1. I think it's one of the most important things on the ballot this fall.
Well, it's certainly a good government amendment. Would you consider it good business as well? I mean, your district it's definitely the backbone, I would say, of Virginia Beach. A lot of the economic activity happens in the 82nd district. A lot of important businesses there. So why should small business and general population support the constitutional amendment again?
Well, I mean, I think it brings good government, and I think at the end of the day, you're going to get districts that are more reflective of Virginia and Virginians. And so I think the idea would be, do you trust politicians to do the right thing in Richmond when it comes to their own preservation? So I don't think it would be healthy to have a Democratic majority draw, these, some type of map that looks like, somebody took a plate of spaghetti and threw it on the wall that zigzag everywhere. And unfortunately, I think it's not good government. And so if you're a small business owner and you want good government, if you're just a Virginian, and I mean, the good news is this thing polls extremely well with voters. They intuitively get it. They want to end gerrymandering. They know gerrymandering has created, I think, some of the worst types of politics that they've seen in different areas of the country. And so let's not let people rig the system. Let's draw fair maps. And this is about fair maps, not gerrymandered rigged maps. And I think that's going to be the key distinction point. And I think it's good government. And I trust Virginians are smart enough and hungry enough for wanting that type of good government. And so, if you want that, vote yes on Amendment 1.
I think one of the things that I've always had trouble understanding and reconciling is we want good government. We want fair and balanced districts. But, because of Virginia's history, a lot of the districts are gerrymandered, and they're designed to protect, certain districts. And meaning, a lot of the black districts are designed to protect the incumbent. Would you say that's true or not true? Or
well, I mean, I think Virginia, for years we're a Voting Rights Act state, and I think that I wouldn't say that as much as I think there have been times, Republican or Democrats, regardless of whatever your background is, I think that the party in power has drawn maps to try to protect incumbents, regardless of your party, regardless of your affiliation. I think that has been too often where they're not as much concerned about necessarily drawing a district that looks like their community. Instead, like I said, they'll take a district, they'll draw lines that, will look like a big inverted U. I think there's a district up in Enrico that looks like this big inverted U that kind of snakes around and then snakes back down. And so the idea is, do you want good government? Do you want to make sure politicians aren't trying to gerrymander the system? I don't think gerrymandering has been good for our current political climate, partly because it's gotten so sophisticated. As people can draw maps down to the neighborhood level. And so, you'll have also confusions where people that vote in a precinct, you'll have a precinct that's split in 3 different ways. And you'll have people that won't even know who their delegate or who their senator is. I don't think that's healthy. I think that's difficult, or even their congressman. I remember I worked for a number of years with Scott Ridgell, and there was a couple of these split precincts that Congressman Ridgell shared with Bobby Scott, and literally people didn't know who their congressman was when they would walk into the ballot box. I don't think that's not healthy democracy. I think we can all recognize that there's a lot of what's going on in our political system right now that's not working. I mean, people's confidence in government is at an all-time low, and I think that's both parties are kind of suffering as a result. I think this is one step among many to create fair maps, not rigged maps, that I think would help bring common sense and sensible government back to Richmond.
Well, Jason, and you and I have a lot in common. One of the things I always appreciated about you is your background. You came from a family of immigrants. You talked about struggle and opportunity. Where do you see the opportunity for Virginians now in this COVID post era?
Well, I mean, I like to say America is a nation of second chances. And, like my earliest memory, Ron, one of my earliest memories was seeing my mother who fled Cuba with the clothes on her back, Miriam Miyares, become a U.S. citizen. And one of my favorite things to do is to speak at naturalization ceremonies. It is always incredibly powerful. And the most powerful moment is always when they stand up and they take the oath of allegiance to the United States and they swear off any allegiance to any foreign power or any foreign prince or any foreign government. And it's an emotional moment. I mean, they are giving up in many ways all that they have known. But, America is in many ways not just a place, it's just this beautiful idea. And Mark Twain has a great quote where he says, America doesn't matter where you came from as much as where you're going. And so many of them are just the most deeply patriotic people you'll ever meet. And they have a deep, deep love because they fled sometimes the most horrific circumstances you can ever imagine. And so there's such sense of gratitude that they're in this nation. And so that opportunity, there's a reason why so many small businesses, and as you know, 2/3 of all new jobs created in America are small business owners. And so many of them are first generation immigrants because they were denied the ability to start a business in their homeland, either because they weren't, from the right ethnic background or the right tribe, or there was their own kind of division, or they came from a war-torn country. They weren't able to pursue their dream. And, I introduced the bill this past session, creating the Virginia Minority Business Commission, because I've always believed in trying to create an economy from the ground up, not from the top down. Big corporations can afford the tax lawyers and the accountants to find a way to get around the tax code. It's a small business owner that is the one struggling. And so, for me, this was my idea would be, well, let's be a resource for those small business owners because, as I said, 2/3 of all new jobs are created by small business owners. Those people that are the first ones there in the morning, the last to leave at night. Let's give them the resources and the tools. There's actually a lot of tools we have at the state government level for small business owners. A lot of people don't even know they're there. So I'm proud to see that this commission got enrolled in the state budget. I got appointed to also serve on the commission. We've not had a meeting yet. But I think those are the type of smart things that we can have, because as we talk about how we're going to renew our urban areas and some of our hard-pressed areas, I think a lot of that it's going to be on the backs of our small business owners who have always been the driving force of the American economy. And I think we need to recognize that and try to give them the tools to succeed.
Delegate Miyares, you are certainly well studied and articulate. I think our region appreciates your leadership. How can folks get in touch with you if they have any questions or?
Well, they can go to my website, jasonmiyares.com. That's MIYARES.com. They can email me, jason@jasonmiyares.com. Again, that's MIYARES.com. Drop me a line. Let me know what you're thinking. You can communicate me through my website or follow me on Facebook. It's just Delegate Jason Miyares. When you search, you'll get my Facebook page. I love to be engaged. I love to be as actively as possible with folks, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing with the Coastal Virginia Chamber. I think it's a critical voice. When I talk about the importance of small business entrepreneurs, obviously you all get that intuitively, and really appreciate what you guys do representing those small business entrepreneurs and engaging with folks like myself and other elected leaders about the best way to create, quite frankly, the best environment for us to be able to thrive and create jobs and create a great way of life.
Well, Jason, on behalf of the Coastal Virginia Chamber of Commerce family, we invite you back anytime to give us some updates, anything that you're taking initiative on, anything that's happening in your district. We appreciate your time and effort. We wish you the best of luck in your endeavors. Take care, Jason.
Thanks, Ron. Appreciate you and appreciate your friendship. Thanks, my friend.
Thanks, brother. Take
Thanks.
care.